huge as Mary Monarch is within the hula community, and for a lot of the halaus that compete, that's not the only thing that's driving, or it shouldn't be the only thing that's driving dancers to continue to dance hula, and I think if that's what's driving you as a dancer, you're probably in it for the wrong reasons.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Ioke'ehu, and this is Hawaii Real. Today, I have with me Taizha Hughes-Kaluhiokalani.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, you.
Miss Aloha Hula 2019.
Aloha, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Oh, it's an honor. It's just a hobby. It's not much.
Well, thank you for asking.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on again. So, how has the pandemic, torn apart the whole Mary Monarch and doing the Miss Aloha Hula obligations and everything like that you guys are supposed to have throughout this 2020 year?
I think, well, luckily, I was able to fulfill all of most of the commitments that I was supposed to be a part of that year. And so I had already fulfilled most of them, within that year. And so I think there was probably one event that I couldn't actually partake in. I think it was just the timing of it. But other than that, I mean, at the time that they had canceled Mary Monarch, we were probably about a month away from actually taking the stage. So to give you just kind of a visual or a vision of what it looked like, we were practicing 5 days a week for hours at a time. I mean, we were literally just in that grit of training and practicing rehearsals and just trying to finalize everything within the practices, right before we get there to Mary Monarch and get there to Hilo. So there was still so much that we hadn't accomplished yet, just with costuming. And our last practice was our first practice with our musicians. So it was kind of a bittersweet because that kind of gave us a visual of what our presentations would have looked like, with our musicians there present. But then at the same time, it kind of left that uncertainty of what would it have looked like, if we were able to, compete,
Were you going to compete again for Miss Aloha Hula in 2020?
No. So once you win Miss Aloha Hula, you're not allowed to. I mean, you're pretty much you can't run again.
Okay.
So unless if you were a place winner, you can compete again. Mm-hmm. But unless you win, yeah, you're not. It's pretty much one and done.
Okay. Well, that's kind of good. Good to know. So you didn't miss out on that aspect and train hard for that one thing.
Right. I mean, the only thing with that whole experience, if you just take into consideration the fact that there was supposed to be a Mary Monarch this past year and there wasn't, there was also supposed to be a Miss Aloha Hula last year.
Right.
And there wasn't. So, all of the halaus were literally about to, take stage and present everything that they've been working so hard for the past 6-7 months. On top of that, they also had their own contestants that were supposed to run and compete for Miss Aloha Hula 2020. And those contestants literally lost out that year, so
yeah.
It's pretty devastating as a dancer, but I'm sure is even more devastating being a contestant that was supposed to run that year and then not even having that opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
So coming from somebody that knows what it took to get to this stage, how hard you work, how much you practice, the time, the effort, the sacrifices that you make to put together your presentation, and to represent your kumus, your halau, the people that have supported you throughout your journey. I can only imagine how heartbreaking it must have been for those girls. So, yeah, it was kind of a hard month to get through, finding out that, they're not going to have Mary Monarch, and then getting to April time and getting to that week where we were supposed to actually be there in Hilo, and then they're replaying like the past years of Mary Monarch, and it's just like, like we would have been there, we would have been performing, we would have been, for some girls, experiencing what it's like for the first time. For a lot of girls, we had a lot of young ones that literally had just moved up from the keiki class, and it was going to be their first Mary Monarch. So yeah, it was just a bittersweet thing, but it's nobody's fault. It's just kind of everything that happened with COVID. And so, there's nobody to blame. It's just what more can you do,
Yeah, just work hard for the next year, push forward, strive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go forward with hope.
I mean, as huge as Mary Monarch is within the hula community, and for a lot of the halaus that compete, that's not the only thing that's driving, or it shouldn't be the only thing that's driving dancers to continue to dance hula, and I think if that's what's driving you as a dancer, you're probably in it for the wrong reasons. So
we'll get into that. What drives you?
What drives me as to dance?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I have a very different story. Hula is, for me, how I identify myself. I identify myself as a hula dancer. I guess we can get into that story now.
Because you do have a story of trials and tribulations from young kid time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My mom, she was a single parent. She had 2 kids. I'm the oldest. I have a younger brother, 2 years apart. He was born with special needs. He was a miracle baby. Doctors had said that he probably wouldn't survive past the age of 2 years old. He was born with many, many diagnoses, including cerebral palsy, epilepsy. He struggled. He struggled a lot, and he required a lot of care. He was confined to a wheelchair. He couldn't walk. He couldn't talk. He couldn't sit up by himself. He couldn't eat by himself. He went through multiple surgeries in order to just kind of allow him to live more comfortably. And he required medication 3 times a day. And so with my mom being a single parent, she took on that role of like, okay, well, this is what it is. I'm going to do the best that I can to be the best mother that I can to these 2 beautiful kids. I'm going to learn more. I'm going to research more, figure out a way to just provide the best care that I can to her son. And I helped her. And she taught me everything that I needed to know about him. And so literally, I was almost kind of like a second mother, and there was a lot of times, where I'd wake up in the middle of the night and there would be firefighters and paramedics and police officers in our house because my brother had a seizure, or something was happening with him and he wasn't responding. And so we spent many nights in the ER. We spent many nights in the hospital. And coming from the west side, which is where I grew up in Makaha Valley, and our main doctor for my brother was based out of Kapilani Hospital. So we would literally have to trek from Makaha Valley to Kapilani Hospital.
Which is like over an hour.
About there. Well, if you're in an ambulance, they're going kind of fast. But that was like in the middle of the night, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And that was like a constant for us. So yeah, I grew up a lot of nights. I grew up in the hospital, went to school, continued to go to school, and, would come home only to go back to the hospital. So there's a lot of things that we had to deal with. But thinking back on it, like, those were the best memories that I had. It was just the three of us, and as hard as what people would probably say my, like, the life of having to live that type of lifestyle was, my mom she just was a wonderful mother to both of us, and it didn't seem like it was hard. It didn't seem like it was a hard life. We did what we needed to do in order to take care of my brother and make sure that he was as comfortable as he could be, and in turn, he gave us 11 years of being able to love him and being able to take care of him and being able to learn from him. I learned a lot, and I grew up fairly quickly. Throughout that experience in my life, I can say that without him and without that experience of experiencing him and loving him, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. So he's molded me, and that experience has molded me into the woman that I am now. And he's not here physically, but I know that he still lives, within me and within my mother, and he'll continue to live on. And hopefully, when I have kids, I can continue to teach them a few things. And
I mean, it's amazing that he lived till 11 years old.
Yeah, I agree. He struggled a lot. I mean, let's say he had scoliosis, severe scoliosis. So his spine was literally spelled the letter S, and that was his spine. So if you can only imagine, like, how much pain he was probably in, and with somebody that can't talk, I mean, we really don't know how much pain he was in and how much he was actually suffering. His hips, because he laid down for so long, because he couldn't sit up by himself, he couldn't, move around by himself, he actually had dislocated his hips. So both of his hips were dislocated from the hip joint. He needed to have surgery on that. They needed to place screws and rods into both sides of his hips in order to just be able to fix that. So I mean, there's a lot that I can remember, and there's a lot that he had to deal with, internally, and I learned a lot from him. And
what's one of the lasting lessons that you learned from your brother?
Unconditional love. Like, unconditional love. Like, I don't know, it's something different when you have to take care of somebody else. When you put someone else's needs and someone else's needs really in front of yours. And I think at a very young age, when you're experiencing something like that, it's kind of hard to, like, already process, because I was a kid doing it. But I mean, honestly, couldn't tell the difference. It was just the life that I lived, and with the help of my mom, and that's how we lived. Honestly, our purpose was to care for him and to make him comfortable, and that's all we knew. That's all I knew. So I didn't know anything different than that, and I wouldn't change any of it for the world. If I could, I would relive it just to go down memory lane and just kind of, like, experience those things all over again.
How does that motivate you and translate to hula, or does that translate to hula?
while all of this is going on with, taking care of my brother, my mom wanted me to have something that I could call my own. She wanted me to have an outlet where I could put all of my energy into, because she understood that it took a lot of attention away, from me, and she just wanted something for me that I could call my own, and something that I could just get all of my energy out in. So she put me in hula. And
how old were you when you started hula?
I was 8.
Okay.
I was 8 or 9. 8 or 9. But I started dancing hula and I loved it. I loved it so much. And there's just a bigger connection that I felt with hula that was unlike anything else. Like, I played basketball. I played, she tried to put me in all these other sports too, like basketball and softball. But it like hula grabbed me, and I clung to it. And that was where I found my own identity and who I was. And so that's why I say, like, hula's a part of me, because it's who I am. It's how I identify myself. And from 8 years old until now, I'm lucky to be able to say that I've been able to dance. Like, we relocated multiple times growing up, from going from Makaha Valley to relocating to Makiki, and transferring schools and just moving around. And I've been lucky enough to be able to still dance hula throughout all of that, throughout the relocation from going from Makaha to Makiki to transferring to Roosevelt, and them having an elective class where they taught Hawaiian hula or Hawaiian dance. And so I was able to stay with it for that long. And that's where I felt the most alive. That's where I felt the most myself. And that's kind of cliche to say, but it's like, that's honestly the truth. That's the truth. And so when I graduated from high school, there was no halau that I was a part of at the time. And so I didn't dance. I went straight into working, and it was about 4 years of no hula after high school. And I think I was working at 24 Hour Fitness, and I was working the front desk, and I was just kind of like, meh. I felt like a part of me was missing. It felt like a part of me was missing, and I couldn't quite pinpoint why I was feeling this way and what I could do to change that feeling. So I thought about, when I was younger, I thought about, like, what was I doing when I was, like, the most happy? And it was when I was dancing hula, So I was like, okay, I'm going to go back. So I made a decision to go back to hula. Was able to come across the website for Halau Hi'iaka na Makalehua. And I was immediately drawn to the description that had, the introduction of Kumukiano and who he danced for, and Kumulono and who he danced for, and what they were, what they wanted for their students, and what they wanted to, what they wanted their legacy to be, to continue the traditions that they were taught from their kumu.
Because they're not just a class; they're more of a halau where you're getting together to really learn the culture.
Yeah, it's a cultural practice. Mm-hmm. So you don't just get into hula and you just stay with hula. It's there's a combination of a lot of things. There's the language, there's the mele, there's the storytelling, it goes way deeper than just the what people think is just hula. So, and So I made the decision to go, and one day I went, and I was like, oh my God, the feeling that I felt all this time of something missing, it felt like that last piece of the puzzle finally fit.
And was that right away? Like the
It was
first day you went?
immediately.
Yeah.
It was immediately. It was immediately. I think it was as I was driving home after that day, because I remember they kind of talked a lot about like their rules and all that kind of stuff, what to expect, what they expect out of you as a student. And then I danced in that class. And then I went home and I was like, oh my God, why didn't I do this sooner? You know, like, why did I wait? You know? But it made me appreciate hula so much more because there was a period of time where I didn't have it in my life. And I was like, it almost felt like internally I was longing for it. And I just didn't know what I needed, but I finally figured out what it was.
So when you got back into it after that hiatus, did you like have like a lot more motivation to stick with it and take it seriously?
Yeah. Well, I think at that time I was older too. So I had a better understanding of like, just a better understanding and a better appreciation of hula itself, and kumukiano and kumulono just pretty much involve you in every aspect of hula as well. You know, not just I'm going to teach you this dance.
Yeah.
Right? They mold you into a dancer, you know, and all that encompasses. You know, there's the physical aspect, there's the emotional aspect, there's an intellectual aspect, there's a spiritual aspect. And so there's so many aspects that, you know, combine you into a dancer. And I was like, you know, it was like a kid at the candy store, and I just love learning, and that's kind of the rekindle of the fire for me.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool that like nobody's making you do that. You know, your mom's not bringing you there and dropping you off and making you do hula or do a sport or anything like that. You're doing it of your own volition, and that's so much more powerful when you're doing it for yourself.
Right.
Because I find that with hockey. It's like I took a 5-year hiatus also from hockey. I was playing hockey from like junior year all the way through college, and then I stopped for like 5 years. But when I got back into it, it was like that. It was like a piece of that puzzle for my soul was missing.
Yeah. So that's good, because now it makes me feel like, okay, I'm not crazy.
You're not crazy.
Sometimes I talk about it and I'm like, I feel crazy. You know, because like, I don't know if people necessarily understand where I'm coming from, but I'm glad that you said that.
It's almost like I would feel bad for people that don't understand that, being that in tune with yourself and knowing what is missing from your life, and that if you get that piece of the pie or the piece of the puzzle, that it satisfies your soul. Like a lot of people have it with surfing or going to the ocean or running or hiking. You know, some people have it with like video games.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, it's good to have that. I think everybody needs to find that, whether it's a hobby or, you know, an outside profession, or, you know, in your case, like competitive.
Another like life-changing experience that I have was just that journey in itself of, you know, just learning, and just that whole process of a combined like 6 months of just kind of like learning about my family, you know. And so in the beginning of that journey, you know, I believe like my kumus were just like, okay, so do you have a genealogy? Do you have a family lineage that we could probably see and reference, to give us some type of inspiration, you know, to that way we can kind of like, you know, see what we can do in terms of like the presentation, choosing the mele and that stuff. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I have a genealogy. So I brought it the next time around, and they were looking through it, and they were like taken back, and I was like,
the jaws dropped.
yeah. And I was like, is that good? Like, and they're just like, do you know who these people are? And I was like, no, I have no idea who these people are. Like, I maybe have heard of a few people. Like, my middle name, I'm named after Keakealani Wahine, and she's a descendant that is in my genealogy, and so I'm named after her. That's pretty much it, really. And so they're just kind of like, you need to learn about them. Like, you need to, in order for you to know who you truly are, you need to know where you come from. Like, you need to know who your kupuna are, and more importantly, you need to be able to continue to talk about them and pass them on, because these are ultimately the people. Like, without these people, you cease to exist, and so I was just like, okay,
Were they important people in Hawaiian history?
they were important people in Hawaiian history. So Liloa was a prominent figure in Hawaiian history. He was an ali'i in the 14th century, and it kind of started off at Liloa, which it kind of listed a number of ali'i that came to follow his line and his lineage, and so they're all listed within the documents that I have. And so that's what my mele was about. My kumus were able to find mele and the chant within a newspaper article, Kaleo Kalahui. And they were like, we need to do this. You're going to translate it, internalize it, and we're going to go from there. And so for me, it was so much more than just a competition and gearing up for a competition. It was literally like finding out who I am through these people, learning about the importance of genealogy, learning about the importance of knowing who your kupuna are, and why it's so important to continue to pass that knowledge down, continue to say their names, continue to talk about them, because that's ultimately who you represent now, right? And without them, there's no you. And one day, you're going to be a kupuna as well. And hopefully, your kids and your kids' kids and the people that come after them will be able to celebrate you. And that's just kind of how that circle continues of the legacy and of the genealogy and of the family lineage. So, it was a huge life-changing experience. And that was only one aspect. What
was that other aspect?
Well, so there's the process of, leading up to the competition and competing for, Miss Aloha Hula. So that journey was like self-discovery, right? Through, my genealogy and my family lineage and the descendants and the kupuna that I come from. And then I win Miss Aloha Hula.
But that was the goal, right?
It wasn't, I mean.
Were you not expecting it?
I wasn't expecting it.
Was it your first time trying?
Yeah. Well, I honestly didn't even think that I would be one of those girls to even have an opportunity to run, because it's not just something that you just sign up for, like, hey, I want to do Miss Aloha Hula. I'm like, okay, we'll run you. It's you have to be chosen by your kumu, and there is 70, 80 other girls that they can choose from, probably within halau, our own halau itself. And so it's a huge honor.
So they choose just one per halau?
Okay. For that year.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge honor in itself being even considered.
Yeah, because you're representing all of them.
Right. You're representing them. You're representing the halal. You're representing their lineage, their kumus. Like, that's a lot of responsibility. But it's a privilege as well, you know, to be able to step up to the plate, you know, and to do your best. And then for me, honestly, like, that whole process, that's not the goal wasn't to win the competition. You know, for me, it was just to learn, you know, to learn more about myself and the struggle of having to work for something that hard, you know, and working hard and struggling for all of those months, and the day in and day out of practices, getting yelled at, and you know, just having to get through that, you know, the hardship. You know, it was so much, there's so much more to that journey than just, I want to win, you know.
You're training like an athlete,
Pretty much. I
like
guess
an
you could
Olympic
say
athlete
that.
kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. And well, the Merry Monarch is what they say the Olympics of hula. You know, so it's held in that type of regard as well, you know. So yeah, I didn't think I was gonna win, to be quite honest with you. I mean, and I could name and list so many things of why I didn't think I would win. You know, I didn't have enough experience. I'd only been dancing for, you know, Halau for like 3 years, you know, whereas some girls have danced their entire lives, you know, like from 3 years old, you know, and I just honestly didn't have that confidence in myself to think that I had the ability to do something like that and then win. So yeah, so then it happened and I was like, holy crap, like what do I do now? You know? And so it's been a very interesting ride.
Yeah.
A very interesting ride. So, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning a lot. You know, naturally I would say like I'm kind of a shy person. I'm more reserved. I'm not necessarily somebody that will be like the butterfly, you know, and
the social butterfly.
Yeah, the social butterfly,
yeah.
you know. But being a Miss Aloha Hula, it has forced me to kind of come out of my comfort zone. You know, it's forced me to do things that I never thought I would do before. You know, speaking publicly, never thought that I would ever do that. Or yeah, never ever thought. Or speaking on camera like this, you know, never thought that I would have to do that, or never thought that I could do that either.
But you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a learning process. There's still
Just do
much more
and it becomes natural.
Yeah. So, you know, but there's things like that I've learned so much, and I just, yeah, you know.
So how does it feel being a representative for the hula community and hula world?
I will say it's an honor to be able to represent something bigger than myself. But I can also say that it can be overwhelming. It's a lot of pressure, you know. It's a lot of responsibility, you know. People think, you know, you're a celebrity, and you kind of are almost, you know. In Hawaii, you're kind of looked at as a public figure. People look up to you, so people expect a lot from you, which can kind of like feel like a burden sometimes. But the best way I know how to deal with I guess that is kind of going back to how I live my life. Anyways, like I live my life striving to make my family proud, striving to make my mom proud, make my brother proud, make my kumu proud. The people that matter most in my life, I strive to just to be the best person that I can be, to be genuine, to be honest, to be humble, to be kind, you know, and to make an impact somehow on others in a positive way, whether it be through hula, whether it be through just life stuff.
Are you proud of yourself?
I am. You know, I am. But I'm going to leave room for there's always more to work on. There's always more to learn. I'm still a student as well, you know, and I think sometimes people forget, like, I'm a student before I am Miss Aloha Hula. I'm still learning, you know, and that's in the hula world as well as in just life. Like, I'm still learning.
Right. So winning that competition doesn't necessarily make you a master at anything.
No.
Yeah.
It just means that you won the competition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I think of it. And that's not to play down Merry Monarch Festival. It's not to play down the competition in itself, because it's so prestigious and it is such a huge honor to be able to accomplish something and achieve something such as great as that. But reality of it is, I'm not the best hula dancer in the entire world. And I think, and I could name a list of things that I need to work on, and a list of things that I still get yelled at till today by my kumus.
But you were the best that night, at that time, on that stage.
Correct.
That's what matters. That's what counts.
Correct. Yeah. But it's also knowing that there's more to learn. There's, you know, and that's part of hula. Hula is evolving and continuing to learn, because there's always something that you need to work on. And that's also part of life as well. So I think with everything that I've, you know, experienced in my life through hula and through my own personal life, ultimately has made me a better person first and a better dancer as well. But I think being a better person is the most important thing.
Taisha, it's been Taizha. Taizha. It's been so good having you on. Thank you for coming on to Hawaii Real.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for allowing me to.
Good luck to you in the future.
Good luck to you.
All right. Thank you. Remember, stay happy, Hawaii.
Stay safe.